All right, so first of all, I want to mention that I really appreciate the discussions that I'm seeing pop up over this week's topic. Um, I, instead of answering each post individually, I kind of want to address more or less of what I'm thinking about. And I, I feel like a lot of you are kind of missing the point that I'm saying. And I don't mean this as an insult. I mean, what I'm just meaning is that um, I'm trying to bring up something that I feel is still being overlooked. I could be wrong, and I'm interested in your even personal feedback. Feel free to text me or call me on this. Um, but many of you pointed out that you sympathized with Daniel Shays and the Shaysites' cause, that they were unfairly being treated. But the founding fathers, well, we know that Thomas Jefferson, he wrote that he thought that these kind of rebellions were good from time to time, and this helped maybe, support liberty. But George Washington and Samuel Adams did not feel that way. And in the case of Samuel Adams, he was directly saying that this was an issue not of a tyranny versus the people, but the tyranny of the mob is essentially what he's arguing that they were up against. And the militias with mercenaries had to be used to suppress this uprising, this insurrection, if you will. And we've learned, although that Shays' rebellion was not the sole reason for creating the U.S. Constitution, is a major factor in it. And in the debate of the Constitution were the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And the Federalists were trying to say that we do need to have a stronger state. The state needs to have more power. Because look what the Articles of Confederation showed and how difficult it was to suppress this uprising. This is part of also one of the arguments among many, okay? And so we start off with the Constitution giving the rights, Article 1, Section 8 clause, of the state to use militias to suppress insurrections and repel foreign invasions, okay? And then we have the Bill of Rights attached to that, which then has the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says, a well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed. Now, here's what I'm trying to point out. The majority of you are saying that the Second Amendment gives us a right to bear arms to protect ourselves from tyranny. Where does it say that? And what I'm trying to point out is that this is an unclear sentence, right? I mean, nowadays this would not work in an English paper. We have all these commas, and we have this discussion of the militias. Well, what were the militias used for? Were the militias mobilized to support states against the federal government, or to, like, in what context do militias work to protect individuals from tyranny? Now, here's my whole point. We look at how Washington, okay, so we move from Shays' Rebellion, which was the context to go in the Constitution. We get into that phase, and whiskey sellers feel unfairly targeted for taxes by the government. And Washington's response to this, if we look, let's see here, where did I put this? Okay, you can find this article. He wrote on this. It's very long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. George Washington on calling up the militias. He then basically says, all right here, and whereas by law, right here, okay, by law of the United States entitled, quote, an act to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. It is enacted that whenever the laws of the United States shall be opposed, or the execution thereof obstructed, in any state by combinations too powerful to be suppressed by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, or by the powers vested in the marshals by that act, the same being notified by an associate justice or the district judge, it shall be lawful for the President of the United States to call forth the militia of such state to suppress such combinations and to cause the laws to be duly executed. All right? So, we look here and we look at the Whiskey Rebellion, okay? And it's a topic that goes on in many different websites about the nature of the Constitution. So here's my question. If the Second Amendment really means that, even though we've just looked at it and it doesn't say anything about giving us a right to protect ourselves individually, okay, or our liberties or against tyranny. But let's say that that's what it means. But then Article 1, Section 8 clause, as Washington points out, gives the Constitution gives the state the right to suppress insurrections. Now, we can all agree that Daniel Shays and the Shayites was a rebellion. We all agree that the whiskey sellers had a rebellion. They thought that the government was being tyrannical. But who gets to determine who's being tyrannical and who's being a lawbreaker? It's the government, right? It's the government that actually enforces the Constitution. So Article 1, Section 8 clause, by default, nullifies the Second Amendment if the people think that that means that you have a right to revolt. If you don't win, the state just says that you're a treacherous lawbreaker. So does the Second Amendment actually give us the rights that we are thinking that it gives us? And in what context do we talk about a well-regulated militia? And now that we don't have a well-regulated militia anymore, we have the National Guard. The question that my friends and I and history buffs have debated is that was the creation of the National Guard by default unconstitutional in light of the Second Amendment? And did the creation of the National Guard by default already kind of make that part null and void? Or how would that apply? Okay, so I hope you follow what I'm saying. I'm not making it a definitive statement. I'm just saying that it seems to me a little bit of a fantasy. I'm going to put it that hard. That's my opinion. To think that the founding fathers on any of these sides here thought that we had a right to take up arms against them if they were tyrannical. Because that I don't see where that's written. I don't see where that is proven. The fact of the matter is, when the state sees Americans revolt against it, they suppress it. And just look at modern times. Look at David Koresh. You can look at what they did to the Black Panthers. You can look at different groups who've tried to rise up and how the state responds to it. You can look at the American Indian movement in modern times. I'm just not sure, Now, having said that, I have arms myself. I believe we have a right to fight tyranny, and that we should, I believe in our rights, right? Okay, but I'm just saying, are we missing the point here? Are we kind of imposing a wish into the law in light of the history that we're seeing in that context? Are you guys following me? Any questions on this, please write me back and call me. But I'm hoping you're getting what I'm getting at, okay? And I hope you're having a good week, and I look forward to reading the rest of your papers.